one of my teeth are absolutely killing me. Ah. That doesn't look right. Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I have no idea at all how this is going to turn out. This video will probably get deleted and never see the light of day. But what I'm going to do is with this opal, I am going to carve a tooth. I'm thinking a big back molar tooth. If it's hard to visualize, I'll kind of sketch it on here roughly with my little red crayon here. I remember as a kid, I got a tooth extracted once. It was a baby tooth and it had these massive legs. So huge legs on either side here, and then just this bulging out top. It also had a cavity over here, but we're not gonna scribble that on. So I'm just gonna do this massive molar tooth and just see how it goes. I like the idea just because when I'm using the Dremel, a lot of people in the early days used to say, oh, can you keep the audio of the Dremel running? It literally sounds like you're at the dentist. You're taking the opal to the dentist, and today we're going to finally get around to symbolizing that with a nice big opal tooth. This is a fairly big chunk of rough. It's just a rough potch from Lightning Ridge. And how we're going to do that is right here. So I've got sintered diamond burrs. These are the big coarse ones, but this is the standard multi-grit kit. That's the one that I'm going to use mostly. Just to get rid of a lot of this top material, I might switch over to using one of the heavy duty boys. And then I've got the 4-pack of Nova points. Those are the smalls, so black, brown, grey, pink. And then I've got aluminium oxide and cerium oxide. Because this section through the bottom here is going to be opal, the cerium oxide is going to do a really good job on that. But up here, this is a bit of like a I don't know what it is exactly, but it does seem a bit like a calcium-ish sandstone material. It doesn't look like it's opal. So for that, I'm going to use the aluminium oxide. It works a lot better on a lot more materials other than opal, but it's hard to beat cerium oxide for opal. That's how we're going to do it. It's going to be a bit bigger than I've drawn here, reaching all the way down and then coming all the way up, and then hopefully getting something that looks like this on the top as well. Not sure how well it's going to polish, but there's only one way to find out, so let's dive in. So starting out, we get out the 80 grit sintered diamond. Now there was a lot of ways for me to approach this, but in the end I decided to do it by doing the legs first and then doing the top. In future, I think I'm going to change that to the other way. I think you should do the finer bits later. I mean, this one worked out really well, but I still think you should do the finer, more fragile parts at the end. I did them at the start because I was worried that the crazing on this stone was going to cause them to break apart, and then I don't want to commit all that time. If it breaks early with the most delicate part, then I could just bail and start again with another piece. Luckily enough, didn't need to do that. You can see here I'm just starting out with a fairly pointy little 80 grit. I use a lot of different shaped burrs for this project, and I think when you do more carving, you do end up using a lot of different shapes in the end because they're all good at their own little thing. But here I'm just notching out, and then we'll time lapse forward, notching out the little legs, and eventually I change burrs and then start working on hollowing out the center a little bit. It was pretty delicate, pretty careful, pretty tough to get into some of these spots. The burrs are a little bit big when you get the massive kit, which I'm not actually currently selling, but I am selling the smaller kit, the varied grit kit. But yeah, it's a very delicate process to get in between a lot of things, and I didn't want to damage them. Here you can see I'm starting to work on the sides and the top. I distinctly remember this tooth having these legs, and then it kind of tapered off and then went to the top, the crown of the tooth. So here I'm just using a much larger 80 grit sintered burr that I thought had the right curvature to take out these little notches, and it's also an absolute beast. So when you see me take off the top, it disappears real quickly. I think the reason this project worked out so well for me is because the stuff gets removed so slowly. I'm always a terrible artist because once you draw a line, it's kind of drawn, but here you can actually get away with doing a lot of mistakes, and it might only cost you a fraction of a millimeter. So you can get away with a lot, and here you can see I'm just getting into that mud. I didn't realize it was so soft and turned into a dirt just under the outer crust. So that came off real quickly. And now I'm just shaping the top of the tooth. The top of the tooth was an interesting one. I did a lot of research before I did the top of this tooth, and yeah, just kind of worked out how it is that dentists do it, and then mimicked it kind of on a much larger scale, and of course I'm not inside someone's mouth, so it was much easier. So you can see here, still using that 80 grit sintered diamond. It's pretty scary. It does remove like even there where you can see me taking off the side of the opal, it basically just disappears. You're just rubbing it off. It almost feels like it's not a stone. It just disappears so quickly with these fast cutting burrs. So be really careful with the fast cutting 80 grits into diamond. It is absolutely a huge step up from even like a 600 grit or even the in-between grits. Like 150 to 80 grit is so different. You really need to practice on some random pieces before you do something that you actually want to keep at the end, because you will disappear stone. And then I've gone to the 600 grit to do the final shaping work, because you don't want to cause chipping. We've already had a chip on one of the legs, as you can see here. And I'm just trying to fix it all up for the 600. I'm actually happy that one of the legs broke, because that's how the tooth originally looked when I had it extracted. This tooth had a lot of problems, and luckily enough it was a baby tooth. So here I'm just going in and out. The 600 grit, much more delicate. You can still remove a lot of material really quickly, so definitely don't sleep on it. You've just got to keep a good focus on what you're doing and make sure you cover all the surfaces, because you've hit them with that really coarse 80 grit. You do need to drop it down to the 600 grit and then move on to the Nova point. So definitely don't forget to cover all the areas you've already covered, as well as doing the final shaping. For a carving like this, I tend to like using the 600 grit diamond burr just to finish everything, and then 280 onwards I'm just doing pre-polishing. You can see here every now and then I get a pocket where I just remove a fair bit of material and let it dry out a little bit. It is much better to have running water, but it ruins my recording setup, so I have to do it with this water reservoir kind of method that I use on the channel a lot. But if you're doing this at home, definitely just get a dripper line and just have a droplet of water coming down from above every now and then. You don't have camera gear in the way, so you can get away with it, and it results in a much easier cutting experience by a long way. So you can see here, just working on the top, just covering that surface. There's no way you can go from an 80 to this 280 grit Nova, so definitely do the 600 first, then the 280, 600, 1200, 3000 grit Nova points. And at this point, there's not really much to say. You have to hit the entire surface or you're not going to get the transition to a polish that you want. Also, you've got to be careful with 280 and 600 in terms of changing the shape. You don't want to change the shape too much, and the 280 and 600 do actually remove material noticeably, whereas the 1200, 3000 grit, you can treat just like Cerium Oxide. You could use those for hours on end and you'll only just slightly change it. And then polishing, pretty straightforward. I just went with the Super Cerium Oxide rather than using the aluminium oxide, because the top, I ended up getting rid of all that dirt, which is what I was going to use the aluminium oxide to polish if I wanted to keep any, but it was too soft. So Super Cerium Oxide, the entire Opal tooth is literally opal, just with a bit of crazed opal, and the Cerium Oxide will polish that easy. I have no idea what I expected, but this is absolutely perfect. This is basically exactly what I had in mind, and it takes me back to when I was in primary school and got my one and only tooth extracted. It looked exactly like this, down to like, I've got one leg here that broke, which I was unhappy about at the time, but then I was going to cut one short anyway, because this is the leg that was broken on my original extracted tooth. The only thing that's different is that there was a huge cavity here that just wasn't worth saving because it was a baby tooth. I reckon I would have been in like year 5 or something when it got extracted. And then I had one really long, pointy, almost a claw of a tooth. I've only just found out since starting this carving that having 4 of these is actually pretty rare. So yeah, 4 rooted teeth are actually unusual, whereas I thought all molar teeth were like this until just starting this video when I had a look. There are a few things that I would have liked to have changed when I did this tooth. I mean, the scale is a little bit wrong. It's probably 3 times what the actual tooth that got extracted looked like. And also, the selection of potch that I chose, this one is unfortunately very crazed. You can see here some of these crazed areas, especially the top up here, all through the sides. I'm actually not confident in letting this one dry out fully, even though I've got it to a fairly nice polish. So I'm going to keep this kind of wet. Maybe I'll put it in one of those display jars with water, just because I really don't want it to fall apart at this stage. And I would redo it with a better piece of potch, but there's no way I'm going to get it all. The stars just aligned for this, and it looks exactly what I have in my memories from being as a kid. So I definitely can't bring myself to do it again. I was gonna maybe go for a cartoon kind of stylistic approach to this tooth because I could easily get like a little template and then I was gonna template it onto the stone, but I thought, no, I'm just gonna do it freehand and try to do exactly what I had removed as a kid. Thank God for baby teeth. Remember to brush your teeth, kids. You only get one chance at destroying a baby tooth until it's an adult tooth, and those are a bit harder to deal with if you get half of it missing. It's hard to show with the reflection from the polish across the top, but it actually really does. I did try to look at a couple 3D models of teeth and try to get the top sorted out. I am a doctor, but not a doctor of dentistry, so this was very new to me, and I learnt quite a bit about how to finish off the top of a tooth. So all in all, a really fun carving. I want to do a lot more of these kind of creative little projects now that I'm feeling myself again. It was really good to do a couple hour-long sessions of carving and really just sink my teeth back into it. Now that I've finished the 60-second videos for the shorts playlist for the beginners to learn everything they need to about carving in 60 seconds or less, I'm going to go back to doing some of these longer form videos because those 60-second videos were incredibly stressful to get put together and edited down to fit into that 60 seconds. It's really not much time to talk about a lapidary carving technique, but hopefully it's useful. Check it out if you haven't already, and if you know of people asking in forums or whatever, just send them that playlist. It's the best way that I can think of to get some basic concepts across to people really quickly. Now I'm going to put this one away and think about the next project.